Hey, what's up, YouTube? Today we are talking about the Amazon FBA seller 2024 fee changes. I'm going to do a full review and breakdown. These just came out recently, and so I wanted to make sure to go through these almost live with everyone because I think that it's important to kind of get a live reaction of things. And this is definitely a fresh perspective for me because I haven't taken a bunch of time to really be able to digest this and see how it works out. There are things that I may be wrong on. So I'm going to give you my first impressions of these new fee changes. We'll also discuss the low inventory level fee that is brand new for sellers. And for those of you in my community following this YouTube channel, doing arbitrage and replans, this may sound concerning to you. So I wanted to be sure to address this because as I've been in multiple different communities recently, I've seen the concern come out from people. And I've seen people with huge concerns that Amazon's trying to get rid of resellers and Amazon's trying to destroy this process. And as I read through how these fees work, I actually became less concerned with that. But if you just focus on the things that are in these different groups and communities, whether it's ones that I promote or ones that I don't even promote, but that I'm a part of, you see a lot of fear. And I totally understand that fear because whenever I started reading comments, I got fearful of all of this stuff. I do think that it's important, though, to discuss these, really break them down as best as we can, and to make sure that we are on the same page, make sure that we fully understand what these fees are going to entail for everyone that's an Amazon seller. And so we're going to go through the exact announcement from Amazon about these new fee changes, and we're also going to break down the new fees that have come out, in the last few days, and will be starting in April 15th of 2024. Some things are starting in March of 2024. So really, we're going to be going through that. So sorry for this little preamble before we get going here, but I wanted to make sure to discuss, hey, we're going to be going through this fully and discussing the low inventory fee level as well. But before we do, I do want to remind you, if you're looking for a community of sellers to jump into and be a part of, it's a free Facebook community I've been a part of since 2015 that I really like and support, and I'm a part of. You can go to bit.ly/MST group. It's a My Silent Team Facebook group. That's bit.ly/MST group. And if you're an advanced seller or doing over $10,000 per month, I currently run a program that helps people to grow and scale their business past $10,000 per month up to whatever your goals are. And so the purpose of that program is to install standard operating procedures into your business, to be around a community of other sellers, and to learn together. There's over 1,500 searchable videos in this community. If you're interested in applying for that, you can go to askjimmysmith.com/legends. Let's go ahead and get into the fee announcements, though, from Amazon. So got my screen up here. I'm using just basically a little test account that I have so I can show people some different things in Seller Central. And so here's what we've got. So update to US referral and Amazon fees. It just came out December 5th. This is December 6th as of the time of this recording. So if you're watching this a few months down the road, this may be outdated. Things may have changed. Things, Amazon may get some backlash and they may decide, hey, this is something that we're going to nix. We're not going to do it anymore. I doubt that. And so we're going to go through this, but I want to read through this together. Really, the first paragraph here is just them talking up how they've done so great over the last year and fastest speeds ever for US Prime members, etc. This is discussing just kind of an overview. In 2024, as we look to 2024, we will implement a set of fee changes that continue to provide you with a great value and allow us to partner together to offer customers amazing service while reducing our collective costs to do so. Now, I do want to let you know that the goal of this video isn't necessarily for me to come on here and say, hey, everything's great, keep selling on Amazon, because I also recommend people sell on eBay and Facebook Marketplace and Walmart and all these other services, right? These third-party platforms. But Amazon is going to take the focus here that this is all great stuff. Don't worry, it'll be fine. It's not much extra money. I am concerned. I hate seeing extra fees, but it happens every single year. And so we just need to understand that that's part of this process. So let's continue on. So after these changes, we expect that sellers will see an average increase of 15 cents in fees per unit sold. Now they're going to compare it to increased announces by other logistics providers, but that's kind of an unfair comparison. In my opinion, they should compare it to announces by other third-party platforms like Walmart, eBay, etc. But they don't do that. But anyway, an average increase of 15 cents in fees per unit sold. That doesn't sound too bad. And I actually believe in going through this that Amazon has provided some give and take. They have reduced fees on things, and that is encouraging for me. But they are increasing fees and other things. So let's continue to move forward. So in particular, we will focus on how we partner together to inbound and place inventory across our network. That is important because Amazon, for the last year or so, I have been talking about this, and other members in my communities, the My Silent Team group that I mentioned recently, have been talking about this, that Amazon doesn't have the same buy box. And we've actually been talking about this for years at this point, but they don't have the same buy box for different areas of the country. So if I'm in Florida, I have a different buy box than somebody in California. And the reason is because of this sentence, that in particular, they focus on how we partner together to inbound and place inventory across our network. And the reason that the buy box is different is because placing inventory close to customers improves the speed of those orders, driving more sales at lower transportation cost. And so to enable more efficient use of our network, we will begin charging separately for inbound and outbound activities. So as a result, we will lower our outbound fees from their fulfillment centers to the customers while creating new inbound fees that you can reduce or avoid entirely based on how you inbound products to us. This paragraph to me is extremely telling and important. Now, we will have a reduction in fees in 2024 for fulfillment fees. That is amazing. I love it. I'm always going to be happy about that. However, they are now charging more fees potentially for the inbound placement services that we're going to go through here in just a minute. But what this is telling me is that Amazon is going to increase these fees because ultimately they know that buy boxes are different around the country. This gives us as sellers an opportunity to look for items that we can sell at higher than typical buy box levels. So in the My Silent Team community, again, and I'll put this up here if anybody's interested, it's free, bit.ly/MST group. In that community, we talk consistently about selling prices above the buy box. And the reason we're able to do that is because of this paragraph that we just went through, that Amazon cares about how we partner together for inbound or to inbound and place inventory across their network. They want fast fulfillment fees. And so they are now going to start charging to make sure that the inventory is placed in different fulfillment centers around the country. What that means to me is that they are continuing to embrace the fact that we should be able to sell at higher than typical buy box levels on certain products that are placed around the country so that they can then fulfill these products faster. And so I highly recommend checking that out in the MST group. And even if you're interested in the Proven Amazon course, there's tons of training in there at bit.ly/pack course on selling above the buy box and other things. So I really am encouraged by this because I think that it's telling that this not new, but this strategy of selling above the buy box is going to be something that Amazon kind of continues to support because they want these fulfillment centers and these fulfillment speeds to continue to be at full capacity and full operation. And so they're going to do their best to get everything distributed to customers as quickly as possible. So if you happen to be the one with your products in a warehouse in Oregon, then Amazon will want to send those to that customer, and they will most likely be giving buy box treatment to the customers that are nearest to the sellers that are nearest to the customers. And I believe that is extremely important. So let's get into the fees a little bit more. We will introduce an inbound placement service fee. Now, this one is confusing for a lot of people, and it's a little confusing, honestly, for me. I'm confused at how this will end up playing out, but we're going to go through these step by step. This inbound placement service fee for standard and large, bulky sized products to reflect our cost of distributing inventory to fulfillment centers close to customers. Okay, so again, they're trying to get inventory as close as possible to fulfillment centers close to customers, which allows the buy box to be even more heavily rotated by those sellers because Amazon wants to promote the people that are closest to the customers that are buying that product. So these fees will average 27 cents per unit for standard size products and $1.58 for large, bulky size products. We will give you the option to pay reduced fees or even no fee based upon whether you send your shipment to a single location or multiple locations. So these fees will be effective starting March 1st, 2024. So these are the ones that are starting in March. But the fees won't be charged until 45 days after the products are received, so around April 15th. That's when most of these things happen. It's around April 15th, but they're going to start charging them March 1st. So let's go ahead and get into the inbound placement service fee page for more details. We'll make sure to do that right here. So in this, you can see that this is just a page that describes what this means. Now, when you create a shipping plan, you can select one of the following inventory inbound placement options. Again, this is going to be starting March 1st. You won't be charged until around April 15th or 45 days later. The premium service, you can send your inventory to a single receive center or fulfillment center, and Amazon will spread inventory across our network on your behalf for a fee. This fee may vary by inbound location, with higher fees for shipments sent to locations in the West versus other parts of the country. So that's interesting that they have those higher fees for shipments sent to the locations in the West. I assume that's just because of shipping costs, and then they would have to distribute that out to other parts of the country even more. But ultimately, the one that I care about the most, and the one I'll most likely use, because that's what I've done for the longest time, forever really, is discounted service. So send your inventory to multiple inbound locations yourself for a reduced fee or no fee. The discount will depend on several factors, such as number of shipments and inbound locations you send your inventory to. That is important. The only thing that I do not like about this wording is it says for a reduced fee or no fee. Because it's not really very telling. And even when we get down to the fees, it continues to say that. So we'll see how this ends up playing out, how much those fees are, etc. It may be worth sending it all to a single location. Maybe there's enough fees in your products to be able to send it to one location and you're saving on the shipping costs. Who knows? That is an option, something we're going to have to wait and see how this plays out. But for the majority of sellers, the discounted service is the one that they're going to use, because we want to make sure that, we're sending it to multiple different locations, we're reducing the fees on our end, and we're able to get our inventory into multiple fulfillment centers that then Amazon can send out for us directly from those fulfillment centers. They aren't receiving it at one location and having to send it to a bunch of different places for us. We're doing it from there. The only other thing is I'm concerned with is that Amazon could start making us send to more fulfillment centers. And again, this is going to be a wait and see type of a thing. Instead of 2 to 4 fulfillment centers, I'd hate to see Amazon say, you know what, you're going to send it to 8 different ones. So we have to watch out for those changes in March. But right now, if nothing changes in how shipments are created, this will be the one that most people will want to use. Now, the premium or discounted service options will be available based on several factors, including product types and quantities you have in your shipping plan, your existing inventory levels across our network, and the location of customer demand. So they're putting a lot of different factors into this. And so I don't like the vagueness of this particular fee and this new program, so to speak. Now, when you create a shipping plan, you'll see a cost estimate for each available inbound placement option. You'll be charged the FBA inbound placement service fee 45 days after your shipment is received, based on inbound location and quantities received. And so you can see here, it outlines the fees for the FBA inbound placement services. This is going to be for sending to a single location. This is how much they're going to charge you based off the sizes of those products. And then this is it for the discounted service, send to multiple locations. We don't know how many that will be. And you're also going to receive a discount up to 100% based on number of shipments and inbound locations. So this is the thing that concerns me. It says a discount of up to 100%. We don't know how many locations Amazon's going to have us send these things to. So it's kind of a wait and see what this ends up becoming, even for the large items as well. There's a bunch of frequently asked questions on this page. I recommend reading through every word of this. I'm not going to do that with all of them. I will go through this first one, which is what can I do to reduce or avoid inbound placement service fees? It says if your shipping plan qualifies, you will have the option to use discounted FBA inbound placement service, where you pay a reduced fee or no fee for sending your inventory to multiple inbound locations across our network. Inbound placement service fees will generally be lower for inbound locations outside the West than locations in the western part of the country. So for me, again, this is the concern: multiple inbound locations across our network. If it's still 2 to 4 or so for FBA shipments, that's fine. If it is going to be 5, 6, 7, 8, that's where the fees can add up, and for actually just shipping the products. And that's the concern that I have about it. But I'm not going to worry about this too much just yet, because every seller will have to deal with this. This won't change things for one seller versus another. This will be every seller that is sending FBA shipments in. And it is something that we have to wait and see kind of in 2024, really in March, whenever that new change happens. Now, let's go back. So we've talked about the inbound placement service fee. I am assuming that this is something that won't be a massive change for sellers based off of the vagueness that they gave us in the fees. Now, if it becomes a huge issue, then that's something we'll all have to deal with, but I'm not as concerned. Now, this is something that I really like. Here's kind of the give from Amazon. It says on average, we will decrease. Nobody in these groups that I'm a part of, very few people are talking about the decrease in FBA fulfillment fee rates for standard products by 20 cents per unit and for large bulky size products by 61 cents per unit. So if you sell 10,000 units a month and they're standard size, that's saving you $2,000 on your fees. So that's not a huge concern for me. I actually really like this. This is an amazing thing. And nobody's talking about this decrease across fulfillment fees, which are applied to every single product that you sell. This is huge. So a decrease by 20 cents per unit. And we're going to go through these changes in a second. But these fees will apply starting April 15th of 2024. The same date that the first inbound placement fees will begin to be charged. So this could actually be a decrease in fees, or if these inbound placement service fees end up being too much, or even the discounted inbound placement service fees end up being too much, well, then it might kind of be a wash of no increase in fees, or it might be still a small increase in fees somehow. So we don't know, but let's just look at the positive piece of this is that Amazon did decrease FBA fulfillment fees across the board. And I really appreciate that. Additionally, products priced below $10 will continue to have that additional 77-cent discount on per unit fees. So if you're somebody selling something at $10.50, you need to look at lowering your product to $10 because you will save a 77-cent discount on that if you can. If you can actually move that price down, then you should look at doing that because lowering it by 50 cents will save you 27 cents because you're saving that 77-cent difference, right? So if you go to this fulfillment fee rates page, you can see more details on that. And I believe that it is here. So here's the 2024 US fulfillment fee changes. For an overview of all the selling fee changes, this is where we were at with this news announcement. Now the changes to size, tiers, and fees. This is essentially just going through, hey, the size tiers are changing. I don't really know anything about the size tiers, so I'm just going to continue to follow using RevSeller, using Inventory Lab, using the fee calculators that we use. And as well, here we've got FBA fulfillment fees excluding apparel. So apparel always has different fees. We can see here that the 2024 fulfillment fee from January to February, February 4th, 2024 is this price, $322, $340, $358, and $377. So because of the changes to the sizes up above, we now have a more broken out fulfillment fee range. So we've got $322, $331, $340, right? Because they are doing smaller bands of pricing. And I think that's totally fair in my opinion. So 4 ounces or less, $331 would be 2 to 4 ounces. 2 ounces or less are $322. So there's a little bit of a change there where there's some increase for some fees. Some different products will have the same exact fee. Like this one, 8 to 10 ounces is $358. 8 to 12 ounces was $358 before. So for about 2 months, we're going to have this increase in fees. However, starting in April of 2024, it will be reduced. It will be going down to $306, $315, $324. I mean, we're looking at 16-cent discounts on a lot of these different price bands. Some of them are more, some of them are less as you continue to look through them. But this is a decrease in fees overall for the majority of the different product sizes. And so I really appreciate that. Additionally, if we go into this, these are the current FBA fulfillment fees. So I was like, well, what were they in 2023 before the peak fulfillment period, which is in Q4? So the non-peak fulfillment period was this, 322, 340, 358, and 377. If we go back here, we got 322, 340, 358, 377. So it really is being reduced on the majority of products because even at the highest, the 16-ounce size tier, we've got a $365 fulfillment fee versus a $377 fulfillment fee. And if we go to the 2023 rates, again, for that 16-ounce product, it was $475 in this particular case. So it's a pretty big reduction. And I really love that that has been so reduced. And then in this peak fulfillment fee period, we're at $505. So after January 14th, This is going down to $377 and then potentially raising to $382 if you're between this 14 to 16 ounce, and then going back to $365. So, I mean, that's a huge difference in the different prices for the fulfillment fees. You can see it's a massive change for Amazon sellers. It's massive. And people need to be focused on these amazing discounts, I would say, for these different rates. I just wanted to focus on that a little bit more. And you go down here and see all the different size tiers and how things are affected for large and bulky items. You can look at apparel as well, the 2024 fulfillment fees here. If you really do want to compare apparel, we can go back to the 2023 options. Here's apparel. Let's just look at a small standard 16 ounce. It was at $415, then $435 during Q4. And then if we look at the 16 ounce for 2024 in apparel, we've got $415 going down to $398. So really, we've got a huge reduction in our fees from 2023 of $435 in Q4, $415 outside of Q4, and now we're going down to $398 for April 15th through the non-peak period as well. So pretty big changes. I'm very happy about those discounts. However, we know that Amazon is not just giving away money. They're doing these things so that then they can charge money in other ways, such as the inbound placement service fee, right? So I think all across the board, we won't see a massive change in how things operate from a fee perspective. It might be a small increase, as Amazon said up here, an average increase of 15 cents in fees per unit sold. That is totally reasonable, especially considering inflation and considering all of the different things that Amazon is doing and just so many different things across the country and based on other third-party platforms. 15 cents per unit fee increase, not bad in my opinion, considering some of the prior years that I've seen Amazon make changes. Now, I'm not going to get into this, which is the ships and product packaging program. Most arbitrage and wholesale sellers won't be dealing with this. You may have some products that can ship in their product packaging, which means Amazon doesn't have to send it in their own box. They can just slap a label on it and ship it out. That is an option if you're doing private label or something like that. This would be an excellent program to take a look at and see if you can enroll your products into for this discount in fulfillment fees. But for most arbitrage and wholesale sellers, you're just going to be sending it in and Amazon's going to be shipping it out in their packaging. Now, excuse me. We will be introducing, here's the big thing that's causing a lot of hubbub. So I apologize if somebody's waited 20 minutes to get to this, but we will be introducing a low inventory level fee for standard sized products. Now, the fee applies if you carry consistently low levels of inventory relative to unit sales, as this inhibits our ability to distribute products across our network. Again, this comes back to needing products across multiple fulfillment centers so that then they can ship it to customers faster for us and for their customers, as well as potentially giving us more opportunity to sell above the buy box, because Amazon wants things distributed in different parts of the country and will be trying to get the products nearest to those customers to them quicker. So we can potentially be able to sell a little bit higher above the buy box in some scenarios, and you have to go through some testing and trial and error to understand that. And again, looking into the My Silent Team community, as I mentioned, it's free. Tons of examples, I think over 50 examples in one post. As well as checking out the Proven Amazon course if you're interested in learning more training about that. But if we go back to this, they're introducing a low inventory level fee. The fee applies if you carry consistently low levels of inventory. And the reason is because it degrades their delivery speeds and it increases their shipping costs if they don't have enough inventory to ship to somebody close. So sellers can avoid this fee by maintaining more than 4 weeks of inventory relative to sales. Well, the majority of Replen sellers and Amazon sellers want to have 30 days to 60 days of stock in Amazon so that they don't run out of stock, especially with inbound shipping times and all kinds of stuff. We want to make sure as much as possible that we are in stock for those products. Now, these fees will apply starting April 1st, 2024. We're going to go through these here in just a second. And then the next thing is to help enable you to carry sufficient levels of inventory. We will reduce the non-peak monthly storage fees for standard size products by an average of 9 cents per cubic foot. So they're reducing another fee because they want to encourage sellers to send in more products and have them in their storage facilities. Amazon's been building warehouse facilities for years. And so now they have the space and they want to reduce the storage fees for standard size products by 9 cents per cubic foot. I don't think it makes up all the fee increases that could happen from this low inventory level fee, but it does help. And I also don't think this low inventory level fee will be a huge concern. So let's go ahead and get into this, because if we look at the low inventory level fee over here, it's a pretty in-depth program. And I have seen other people mention this, and I kind of fall into this, this thought process too, that the low inventory level fee is going to apply across the board to all sellers. And Amazon is going to be applying this to an ASIN level, not to a seller level. That is my guess. I could be wrong, and I'm willing to be wrong that it is going to be a seller level. I just think that Amazon's going to have too much difficulty in being able to apply those fees with all the different sellers. And so what they're going to want to do, in my opinion, is they're going to look at an ASIN and they're going to say, this thing needs X amount of inventory, and then it needs to have this much across our fulfillment network. And if it doesn't have that, then we're going to increase the fees across that ASIN level for every seller. I hope that that's the case, because then it is more predictable for us as sellers, that we'll be able to see that as an issue, and we'll be able to know that if we send in products, these are the fees we're going to have, versus, hey, we have a product that's not really selling that well, and Amazon needs us to send in more because we sent in 3 or 4 units to test. That doesn't make sense. And so we need to, I think that becomes very tricky. And I hope that that's not the way that it's going. And by reading through this, I feel more confident that this is going to be by ASIN level. And I may be wrong. And so I'm just telling you that, but let's read through this together, because effective April 1st, 2024, a low inventory level fee will apply to standard size products with consistently low inventory relative to customer demand. Now, when sellers carry low inventory relative to unit sales, it inhibits our ability to distribute products across our network, degrading delivery speed and increasing our shipping costs. So this could be a situation where private label sellers really are more affected because they have to send in more product up front. Or wholesale sellers could be more affected because they're the only ones responsible for making sure there's enough inventory at Amazon's fulfillment centers to meet customer demand. That is kind of how I understand it. However, I know that in my communities that I'm a part of, we recommend the inch deep, mile wide philosophy of sending in 2 to 4 to 10 of an item and seeing how it sells and testing that before you buy a bunch of it. And so that is a concern that Amazon is now going to be charging fees for that against sellers that do that strategy. However, I don't think it's going to be the case. I think it's going to be more ASIN wide, as we'll get to in a second. But I also want to say that if the case is that Amazon is punishing sellers that do that, and that actually ends up being true because they're going to charge these fees by seller, well, ultimately, if that is the case, then I would still rather send in 6 to 8 of an ASIN and test it and pay some higher fees up front than try to send in 100 of an ASIN and get stuck with a bunch of product. I think ultimately it's going to be a better test if you're testing small and you are sending in a small amount of inventory that then sells out. And then you can say, okay, cool, I can now buy 20 of these things and send them in, and I won't have this extra fee. But I think that this will apply to the ASIN, not to the seller. And again, I could be wrong. Read this yourself. We'll have to wait and see kind of how this applies and how Amazon clarifies. But let's get into it even more. So low inventory level fee will only apply if a product's inventory levels relative to historical demand, known as historical days of supply, is below 28 days. So let's think about that sentence. How will Amazon know the historical demand of a product for a seller if they have never sent it in? There would be 0 days of history if they are applying this to the seller level. They are only going to be able to know the historical days of supply below 28 days or 90, which we'll get to in a second, based on the history of that ASIN. So if we're looking at this, to me, that is just referencing that either one, Amazon's going to have to wait 30, 60, 90 days to apply this to a seller because they won't have that history. Or they're going to be looking at the ASIN level, and they're going to be saying, we need this amount of supply. And so all the sellers that are a part of this need to get it over that amount of supply for us to not charge this fee. That is why I believe it's going to be an ASIN level, not a seller SKU level. Now, we will only charge the low inventory level fee when both the long-term historical days of supply, that is the last 90 days. So they've got a long-term low inventory level, a long-term historical days of supply of 90 days. And they also have, and the short-term historical days of supply, that is the last 30 days, are below 28 days. So they're going to be charging this fee if you have both an issue with the long-term days of supply and an issue with the short-term days of supply. It's not one or the other. It is both. And so I appreciate that, because there are scenarios, let's just say for Q4, right? Maybe you have a Q4 heavy product that in the long term, you have a ton of supply because you stocked it heavy up front. But then in the short term, you're running out of supply because you're selling so much of it. Well, if your long-term numbers are good and your short-term numbers are bad, they're not going to charge this fee, and vice versa. If your long-term numbers were bad and your short-term numbers are good, they're not going to charge that fee either. So I think that they're giving some fluctuation or flexibility for seasonality, which I appreciate. Now, for example, if a product's short-term historical days of supply is above 28 days, but the long-term historical days of supply is below 28 days, the low inventory level fee will not apply. Again, we just went through that. They will calculate the historical days of supply metric at the parent product level. So if you're selling things with variations, it's going to be at the parent product level, not at the child product level. And we'll add the low inventory level fee to the FBA fulfillment fee for all shipped units of eligible products. Below is the low inventory level fee rate card. So this is important as well. Let's take it, for example, if a seller was, or if Amazon was charging this fee on a seller SKU level that I, as a seller, am sending this in, well, they couldn't charge that fee to me on a parent a parent product level. They'd have to charge it on the child product level because I'm not selling the parent product level product, right? Maybe I'm not selling that variation that is the parent product. I'm selling the child variation that is the child product. And so they would have to take a look at my individual history of sales and my individual stock levels to then charge that fee. But they aren't doing that. They're going on the parent product level. So they're looking at the ASIN level, the parent ASIN level. So that is based off of the whole entire variation or ASIN variation product. Now, additionally, they said that they will add the low inventory level fee to the FBA fulfillment fee for all shipped units of eligible products. That's, to me, is saying all shipped units of the ASIN, not just my particular SKU, but of the ASIN itself. Totally fine, because as arbitrage sellers, that means we should be able to see if products are selling well enough. And that means that they should be able to tell us that fee up front if this turns out to be true, that it is an ASIN level thing, not a seller SKU level. Now, here's what it looks like. This is the low inventory level fee, 0 to 14 historical days of supply, 89 cents, 14 to 21, 63 cents, etc., 32 cents for 21 to 28. All of that. Now, they're charging higher fees if there's less and less stock available to fulfill, which makes sense. So essentially, as maybe you've got products that become discontinued, Amazon's going to have to start charging these higher fees towards the end of the life cycle of that product. But typically, if they're charging these higher fees because there's not enough stock, that means prices are also raising for sellers at that time. So you should be at a higher price point if there's not enough stock to keep up with the demand. That's all Amazon's saying, that as stock is diminished, as there's less supply for a product, that means that there's too high of a demand. So whenever you see a too high of a demand, not enough supply, prices are typically higher, and Amazon's going to charge fees to make sure that they can get a product that may be warehoused in California all the way to somebody else that might be, living in Maine, right? So these are the reasons why I am not concerned with this, because to me, I'm 90% positive that this will be an ASIN level change, not an individual seller change. Now, to determine fees, first determine a product size tier and then its shipping weight, etc. They're just telling you how to use this. That's fine. Now, here's some FAQs. Which products are eligible? So it only applies to standard size products if the historical days of supply is less than 28 days. The low inventory level fee won't apply to the following. So if you're a new professional seller for the first 365 days, if you're brand new, you don't have to worry about this. So that's interesting to me. I don't know exactly how they're going to charge it. This makes me concerned that it is, or it will be, based off of a seller SKU count or seller SKU fee versus an ASIN fee. This is the only thing that makes me think that it is per seller, not per ASIN, because they're able to take that fee off for new professional sellers versus for people that have been selling for a longer time. Now, the next thing is new to FBA parent products for the first 180 days. So if you're creating new listings, they won't be able to charge you these fees because they don't have the history of the sales levels. and then any products that are auto-replenished by Amazon warehousing and distribution. Now, how will the low inventory level fee be assessed? So the low inventory level fee only applies to a product when both its long-term, that is the last 90 days, and short-term, that is the last 30 days, historical days of supply are below 28 days. A lot of numbers, but essentially they've got the ability to say, hey, if we've got days of supply of less than 28 days in any of these two categories, then that would be a trigger. Now, we will use the greater of the long and short-term historical days to determine the fee tier. So whichever one is greater, they will use that. Below are examples on how the low inventory level fee will be assessed. So here's an example of products that incur low inventory level fees because both long-term and short-term historical days of supply are below 28. So they've got historical days of supply 24. The long-term is 18. The short-term is 24. So the standard FBA fulfillment fee of $408 per unit, this is the standard rate. Here's the low inventory level fee of 36 cents per unit because they're using the rate from 21 to 28 days of supply. So they're showing that if you've got one in this little price tier up here, the 21 to 28, they're going to use this cheaper fee than the one that was at 18, between this band. So that's nice. They are using the cheaper fee option for us here as well. So you can see there's 18 days of supply, but instead they're using the 21 to 28 historical days of supply because this one, the short term, is 24. So they're using the cheaper fee out of the two options. And then the total new FBA fulfillment fees is this. So this example also makes me think that it's by ASIN, that they won't be able to really figure that out by SKU per seller. They're going to have to do it by ASIN and say, hey, we don't have enough inventory across the country, so we're adding a low inventory level fee to this ASIN of 36 cents per unit. Again, I could be wrong. This may be just false hope. But as I'm reading through this, all of these things, except for one so far, which was right here, except for this one, I think everything else tells me this is by ASIN, not by SKU. Okay, now example 2, this is an example that does not incur the low inventory level fee, and here's why. So the long term is 40 days of supply, but the short term is 20 days of supply. So even though the short term falls below 28, the long term is above 28, and so it's fine. We are good. There's no low inventory level fee, so the FBA fulfillment fees are still the same as the regular fulfillment fees. And then the third option here, we've got a historical days of supply of 35. The long term is under 28, but the short term is over 28. So again, no low inventory level fee. Great. I think that's perfectly fine. Amazon will give us, hopefully, plenty of notice and allow us to make the right decisions based off of this new fee structure. You can see this. How can I view my historical days of supply metric to determine if I have products that are subject to this fee? I think this is another thing that makes me think it could be seller SKU level versus ASIN level. So that is the only other concern. I may be, again, a false hope here. And then what metric is used as the basis for the low inventory level fee? We will use a metric called historical days of supply, which is calculated based on average daily inventory units on hand divided by average daily shipped units over both the long term and the short term. The low inventory level fee will only apply to a product when both its long-term and short-term historical days of supply are below 28 days. We've got average daily inventory units, and they talk about this. So it's sellable inventory units in our US fulfillment network only. It is calculated by adding up inventory units available for sales, units that are being transferred between fulfillment centers, and units reserved that are not currently needed to meet immediate customer demands. It does not include unsellable units such as pending removal or disposal or liquidation units. And then average daily shipped units is all units shipped from our US fulfillment network, regardless of customer location. For example, units shipped to customers outside of the US through remote fulfillment are included if the units shipped from our US fulfillment network. So here's some different formulas. You can see average daily inventory units, average daily shipped units, long-term historical days of supply. They're just showing you how these things are, or how these metrics and numbers that they come up with them for long-term and short-term. Now, in the FBA inventory page, we will show one historical days of supply metric, which represents the greater of long-term and short-term historical days of supply. So the greater of the two. So if you're at 28 or 30, it will show that. So if in the example before where the long term was 18 and the short term was, I think, 24, they would show 24 in that example. And that's what they're going to use to determine the low inventory level fee tier. We will also show details of long-term and short-term historical days of supply in the page for your reference. In the example above, the historical days would be 42, which is greater of long-term historical days and the short-term. Again, they're using the greater of the two numbers. Now, the historical days of supply metric is calculated at the parent product level, not at the seller SKU level. So all child products related to the same parent product will have the same historical days of supply. That's not very fair, in my opinion, if you're only selling one of the variations, if you're only selling one SKU. So it's got to be on an ASIN level, right? Because if you're not selling the parent, well, or any of the other variations, it can't really apply to you because you don't have anything that would apply to this metric, right? So they have to take a look at the entire ASIN versus the seller SKU. Now, the metric will be updated weekly, and the latest available historical days of supply will determine the fee rate for units shipped that week. So this could apply per seller, but I believe this will be per ASIN based off of this as well, because they're going to have to update it weekly for each individual parent product ASIN. This is talking about why does the greater short-term versus long-term. I think that's totally fine. We don't have to get into that. How can I minimize or avoid the low inventory level fee? All right, so for products where inventory is manually replenished, you'll have the opportunity to minimize or avoid the low inventory level fee by making recent improvements in inventory levels. You can do so by sending in additional units such that the product's short-term historical days of supply exceeds 28 days. The product's short-term historical days of supply is above 28 days, the low inventory level fee won't apply. We've already gone through this. You may enroll your products in auto replenishment. Most arbitrage sellers aren't going to do that. And then how do FBA minimum inventory level metric, historical days of supply, and the low inventory level fee relate to each other? Again, this is kind of a rehashing of everything that we've just talked about. So if I were to look at this, there's a couple things. One, I would say that with the low inventory level fee, my feeling, based off reading everything, is that it has to apply per ASIN. And if it applies per ASIN, then each week those fees will be updated in calculators, in the seller profit calculators, etc., rev seller, all those things. They will be updated to reflect if there are any low inventory level fee changes. And so that's good, because if it applies across the ASIN, then it applies to every seller. And from an arbitrage perspective, that would mean that every seller sending in units helps us to make sure that there's enough supply. Also, if that's the case, then that means if we've got too little supply for the demand, then prices should be raising in our selling price for the buy box, because that means we have less than 30 days of supply across the board for all of Amazon's customers. Well, the prices will be higher because of that. In my opinion, it's not going to happen on everything, but that's kind of how supply and demand work, right? So that would be another thing with the low inventory level fee. If we really have that few of units across the board, if it's by ASIN, then we should be fine in being able to absorb that fee, because we've got a higher price point that will then help us to sell for more profit. And I think repricers would then have to adjust based off of this. If they're saying a low inventory level fee is going to be applied, well, then repricers may be able to trigger a repricing event upward, so that then you're able to deal with that extra having too much demand for the supply that's in stock. Now, the next thing would be if it is applied by seller SKU or by the individual seller's ASIN. I do think that's going to be too difficult. I also think that Amazon does not use that language except in maybe a couple things. Like for new sellers, they don't have this fee to worry about, which is interesting. By the way, if you're a new seller, that's great for you, right? You don't have to worry about this fee. But anyway, if it is a seller SKU level, then there's a couple things. One, it will take Amazon a little bit of time to figure out what that is for you. Now, they're not saying that they're going to take 90 days of your SKU levels to be able to determine this. So that doesn't make sense of how they could apply historical selling data without having any historical data for your account. But if that's the case, if they somehow say, hey, you have to send in this many to not be applied this fee, well, then we'll know. But I still think that we would have to make those decisions on individual ASIN levels. If Amazon says you have to send in 10 to avoid this fee, well, it might be worth it if the keep a chart looks good and if you feel like you are profitable enough. But if Amazon says that you have to, send in 100 to avoid this fee, well, then that is something to consider. And you'll just send in 4 to 6, you'll test it, you'll pay a little bit of higher fee. And then maybe the next time, if you found out this was a good ASIN, we'll send in more. And that way you aren't going to be charged this fee, right? So this is just kind of a testing fee almost. So there's a ton of different changes here with Amazon's rates. I'm not going to go through the rest of it because for the most part, it does not apply. They're more like apparel products. There's reduced referral fees for apparel products, which is good if you sell clothing or shoes. They have a lower pricing structure for Amazon Vine, which doesn't apply to arbitrage. It applies to private label. They have a US FBA new selection program and updated rates and benefits for supply chain by Amazon, etc. So those are the main changes. We've got some big ones. And if I'm looking at this news thing again, we've got the inbound placement service fee. So that's a little vague. I think ultimately it won't affect us too much with if we aren't paying to have everything sent to one fulfillment center. If you're still doing regular FBA shipments like most arbitrage sellers, shouldn't affect us much. So I'm not concerned. They have a decrease in FBA fulfillment fee rates, which will help us tremendously. And I think that that's a huge benefit. They also have the ships and product packaging program, which shouldn't apply to arbitrage sellers, but it could, depending on if certain products are enrolled in that program and we happen to be selling them. And then the low inventory level fee. I think that that is going to be by ASIN versus by SKU. But if it is by SKU, it won't be a tremendous amount. And it's going to be more of a testing ground fee, in my opinion. We're going to be needing to send in, a little bit less and paying some higher fees at first to then find out, okay, cool, we are able to sell this product at a good profitable price. So now we're going to send this in at a higher inventory level amount, and then we'll save on that fee level. So it kind of helps us in that way. It does hurt us up front. I'm not going to lie if that is based off seller SKUs. But looking at the language, I think that it's by ASIN, not by seller SKU. And I think that that's a very important thing to realize. And if it is by ASIN, then it'll affect every seller. And that would also mean that we'll have a higher demand than the supply that's available. So we can typically sell at higher buy box prices. And looking at all of these things, Amazon cares about having enough inventory across all of the nation so that then they can provide a 2-day shipping timeline or quicker. Now, that's not going to always happen. People have issues with that, whatever. But that's their goal. So that means that we have more opportunity on fast-moving ASINs to be able to compete at a higher than the buy box price based off Keepa charts. And that's where I highly recommend just going to the free Facebook group, checking out over 50 examples where Jim Cockrum has put that into the Facebook group, bit.ly/MST group. There's also free training, I believe, in the Proven Amazon course on selling above the buy box at bit.ly/pack course. And also, if you are just interested in learning on how to do that, I think this is a great time to start learning that while we're in Q4, before these fee changes take place, because then you can be ready for when these fee changes take place. How can you take advantage of selling above the buy box? And lastly, I'll just remind you, for anybody that's over $10,000 per month, they're looking to grow and scale their business with systems, over 70 systems, 1,500 searchable videos, hundreds of sellers that are part of this community. I recommend applying to join at askjimmysmith.com/legends. And hopefully I'll see you in the Legends, business building Legends community. But if anybody has questions, leave comments down below. Excited to see you at the YouTube channel. So subscribe to the channel if you want to be a part of any other updates and things that I do in the future. And I hope this video helps you and blesses you. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a blessed rest of your week.